Joining us now in the studio is Lisa O'Keefe, a Republican candidate for New York State Assembly. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. And I'd like to say I'm not only a Republican candidate, but I'm also on the lines for the Conservative and the Independent.
So multiple lines.
I am, because I'm going to represent all people when I'm elected in.
So the election, I hate to say it, it's August 6th. The election really is just around the corner, even though a lot of people don't really start to think about politics and candidates, local races and national races till after Labor Day. But now is a very important time for you and for all candidates.
Absolutely. It's always been an important time to me, too. When I went around with getting the signatures for the petitions, I made sure that I was the lead person doing that. So I went around and got thousands of signatures because it gave me the chance to hear people's voices. And over again, I heard people saying that they felt they're not being listened to. So it was a perfect opportunity, and I continue to meet as many people as I can.
So this is interesting for us because going back decades ago, we were both in local media. I was working for WNBF, and you, for a time, were working for WICZ, Channel 40.
I was at 12 years of age, now that you mentioned decades ago.
Yes. You were one of their youngest hires.
I was.
And tell us a little bit about that. Actually, let's just talk a little bit about your early life and how you wound up, at least at that early stage in your life, getting involved in the media business and journalism, and then what's happened since. First, your childhood, a little bit of background.
Absolutely. So my father moved us all here to Binghamton at the tail end of my fifth year in school. And the reason he moved us here was because he had volunteered to go to Vietnam to save lives. He headed up air rescue, and he knew he was going to be in the front lines all the time. And when he moved us all here, he said something that always has stayed with me. He told me he probably wasn't going to come back, but he said not for us to ever hate anyone because they all have families just like he does, and they all love them just like he does. And he said, I'm doing this because I have to, because you always have to do something that's greater than yourself. So that's why I'm in politics, but let me go ahead and answer your question. So my dad moved us here for a couple of reasons. One, this is where him and my mother grew up, and we had family here. And also because at that time we were a thriving area. I think you might remember we used to be called the Valley of Opportunity. And that name stayed with us for years and years and years. In fact, even 20 years ago when my opponent got in, that's what we were known as. Now we're known as a county with the second highest poverty rate in all of New York State. Our poverty rate is actually double that of the national average. And in 2020, 2021, our homeless rate went up 50%. So keeping in mind what my dad had always said about these things that are bigger than yourself, that's why I decided to run, because I have a different vision and I want to bring that to people and let them know that I hear their concerns and I'm going to work toward a better future.
So where did you live before you came to Broome County?
We lived all over the world. I was born on Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. We lived at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, which is where my brother was born. Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, just anywhere you can think of an Air Force Base where they were keenly interested in saving lives with air rescue. My dad was always the head of it, so we always went from base to base with that. And it was an interesting time, and I consider myself fortunate because although I didn't have the bonds in early childhood as you get with your friends because we were constantly moving, I got to experience so many different cultures and ways of life, and that has always stayed with me, to appreciate everybody and everything and bring that knowledge over with me.
Tell me a little bit about going to school here in Broome County.
I absolutely loved it. I had some of the best teachers. I had Mr. Young, who was the county executive. He was vice
Carl Young.
Do you remember?
I remember him well.
He was fantastic, and I cannot say enough things about our teachers here, about our administration. They actively take a concern in the students, and what I love is, even back then, they thought outside the box, because I remember I was in a class once where the teacher was talking about Vietnam, and she was talking about it from what she read in the media. That's all she knew. I knew about it from hearing firsthand stories about my dad. So I immediately said, my dad's going to come into class the next day and teach from his point of view. And she immediately accepted it. So that was pretty new back then. You know, that was thinking outside the box. So we've always been a leader in things. We have, you know, we're so lucky here. We have some of the most beautiful landscapes, amazing teachers, amazing people in general, and great mom and pop stores that have been around for generations and those that are springing up now.
And the sad thing is, though, a lot of the mom and pop stores that were around a few decades ago sadly have vanished, and that's to be expected on some level, because sometimes future generations decide, I know how much my parents worked for the business, and let's face it, some people aren't prepared necessarily to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week to maintain a family business. So sadly, sometimes these things, businesses, large and small, that have been fixtures go by the wayside. But still, every time a family-owned or a small business closes, it represents a big loss for our community.
Absolutely. And you know what was really disheartening? When we had COVID, during the height of COVID, we saw so many restrictions on us. And not only restrictions, but because of these restrictions, we saw companies close and mom and pop stores close. And some of them, like I said, multi-generational. They couldn't afford to stay into business anymore. So we saw them close. And when they closed, people lost their jobs and they had to scramble to find somewhere else to work to go ahead and keep a roof over their head. I have a problem with what happened during that time, because during that time when everybody was hurting and things were closing down, our legislature, our state legislature, and I'm not saying one party because it's not a one-party issue. So our state legislature went ahead and voted themselves a 29% pay raise, making themselves the highest paid state legislature in the nation. So we're now at $142,000 a year. Plus they wrote in that they can have another job paying up to $35,000. And this is all on top of all the perks that they get and everything else. That does not show that there's solidarity with the people. You know, when the people are hurting, you don't give yourself that type of a pay raise. A lot of the other state legislatures make so much less. Florida and Texas, under $10,000 a year. New Mexico, they don't even take a dime. So I have a real problem with the fact that there's a 29% pay raise, because you work, you know, when was the last time you remember getting a raise that was 29%? It's pretty high. That's pretty much unheard of. And what I think some people in office, and again, I'm not picking on a party in specific, but I think what some people forget is that the people who are voting, they're the employers. They vote you in. They give you their job, and they can fire you by voting you out. So you have to be responsible to the people, and you have to go ahead and decide if you're going to be spending the people's money, you do it wisely, and you do it in some way that goes ahead and helps them.
Our guest is Lisa O'Keefe, who is challenging the incumbent Democrat, Donna Lupardo, and she's been part of the state legislature for a long time. Why do you think she might be vulnerable this year?
I believe that the people are really listening to the issues now. I think for too long, we've been seeing where a lot of people want to go into name calling, or let's sensationalize things. Let's get the drama going. But people now are listening to the issues. And I've been bringing a lot of the issues to the people. I'm not saying that she doesn't care about New York State. Nobody goes into office and doesn't care. I'm not saying that she hasn't done some good things in the state. Whenever anybody says she's done nothing for the state, I always correct them. You can't be in office for 20 years and not do some good things. So I'm never going to say that. But obviously we went from the Valley of Opportunity down to the second highest poverty rate in New York State. We're not going in the right direction. We're not doing things to make everybody thrive. And again, you know, when we talk about issues, I can mention all different demographics that are having some type of effect. And may I go into some of them? I'm not sure how long I'm allowed to speak on each subject.
Sure, briefly. Yeah, I mean, you'll be back, and,
He's saying
and
briefly
certainly
to a candidate.
I know it's a dangerous word. Also, just so everybody knows, Donna Lupardo will be invited to come on the program. Haven't had her on the program really in quite a while, and certainly not to discuss this year's campaign, but she'll be invited, and certainly I fully expect that hopefully we'll have her on a couple of times and you on at least one more time between now and November 5th. So, yeah, pick three issues
okay.
and touch on them briefly.
I just wanted to mention or build off what you just said. I think it's fantastic what you just said. Donna absolutely needs to be talking as well. I know that when I went, like I said, door to door with the petitions to get signatures to be on the different lines, I had a problem getting into a couple of the nursing homes. And I went ahead and told them, it's not about me. Pick a day when it could be both Don and I, and we'll sit in the main room. And if people want to sign it, and if they want to talk with us about issues, that would be great. Because it's not a one-sided discussion. People need to hear from all sides so they can make an educated decision. So a couple of the topics, you said pick a couple. So the first one is crime. So I heard so much from people as I go door to door that they don't feel safe anymore. And that is not the fault of our law enforcement. We have some of the greatest law enforcement in the nation. I am so proud of the people. I just was at their clam bake yesterday. These are gentlemen that are really dedicated to this community and willing to put their lives at risk to go ahead and protect us. So it's not their fault. It is the fault of our government through their inactions and their misactions with things. So everybody knows about the ticket and release programs. Most people I find when I talk to them about it, they think it only applies to misdemeanors. It does not. It applies to just about everything. So there was a person in Buffalo who her boyfriend beat her up and so badly she got a restraining order. Well, he was ticketed and released, and the very next day he went ahead and murdered her in front of her kids. There is a man, Isaac Rodriguez, who committed a crime, and by time he went to trial for the first crime, he had committed 55 more crimes, one of which he did with his gang, and he left the man for dead. So these are the things. Even in Cornell, we had that gentleman at Cornell University who wanted to go ahead and rape and murder all the female Jewish students. We would not have been able to hold him based on our New York law, but thankfully we went above that and we were able to get him in Broome County Jail. So people don't feel safe. And here's something I think very few people know about. So I'm gonna ask you for your opinions on things. Not how you feel about the bill, but we're just gonna role play a little bit. So pretend somebody goes to my house and they're stabbing me and just doing everything heinous you could think. You, Bob, are noted as always as a good guy. I know people, when I tell them I'm going to be on the show, it's not just local people, it's New York State people, and people as far away as Florida said they still listen to you. You are amazing. So you're a guy, so you watch me being stabbed and everything else heinous happening to me. Who are you going to call? Who would you call?
Calling the police.
Very good. Because
Absolutely.
He's a good guy.
I'm calling 911 and... Yeah, and I would not be Michael Dukakis. It brings back a Michael Dukakis moment in a debate. And when you think about real-life scenarios, when somebody you know and love is being attacked, who knows how you'd behave. But, yes, the first call you make is to the police, and then we'll see what happens after that.
See how great he is? He knew the answer. So he calls the police. The police rush over. They see me still being stabbed. They go ahead and they take the man away. He's ticketed and he's released. Now, 35 days after he's released, he is given the name and home address of every single witness. Now, the Sixth Amendment says, like when you're in trial, you have the right to know who it is who bears witness against you, and that is critically important because we don't want people making up stories. But that's in a safe environment. So, Bob, you know this man now has your name and home address, and it's still months and months before he goes to trial. He's walking around with your name and home address in his back pocket, knowing that you stand between him going to jail or walking free. How safe does that make you feel?
It makes me feel very unsafe. I'd be scared for my safety.
Yeah, absolutely. So that needs to be wheeled back because now we're making witnesses afraid. On top of that, all he has to do is say to his lawyer, you know what? I don't remember doing that to Lisa. It's really foggy. I really need you to do a court order so I can get down there and talk to her again. So he doesn't come alone. He comes with his lawyer. But still, that causes PTSD in the victim now because now the victim has to hear the person asking them questions. Lisa, I really don't remember. Exactly where did I start? Did I stab you in the chest? Did you scream? What happened? So now you're making this person have to relive it with that. That is way too much for anybody to have to deal with. So we have to go ahead and re-examine things. When I have a magazine that I'm going to be mailing out, and it has my home number on the back. And it also says that I'm looking for focus groups. Because when I was in office once before, I did this. It's so critically important to hear the people's voices and to have focus groups. So one of the focus groups I want is with law enforcement and people who have an interest in crime. So I can hear their voices firsthand and craft the right type of legislation. So it's smart legislation rather than guessing that this is the way to go and then spending money on it and finding out that it's not.
Talking with Lisa OKeefe. You're going to be coming back soon.
Absolutely, anytime you want.
Let's do one other issue that you think is important, and this time keep Keep it to about 60 seconds.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, all right.
I know. That's
and I'll
a
talk
big
much
challenge.
faster then. All right. So another issue is just we're not spending our money wisely and we're not being transparent with it. We have $14.8 billion in discrepancy funds. Those are funds that only the governor knows what's in there. Only she knows how to spend. We should know what it is. It's our money. And even her controller said that allows for corruption and for waste. We lose money. We have millions of dollars we forgot to spend for the senior citizens. We need to spend that, and we need to spend it effectively. And then we take money away from programs. We always do the switch type of thing, and we give it to something else. $800 million was earmarked for family and children's services. These are parents that want to go ahead and do better, and they need that money. They need that help. I remember what it was like to be a single parent. I remember what it was like not to have the money to give my child anything at Christmas. It kills you. But you need that money. You need to help these people to rise up, give them the training and so forth. And that got switched over to the Buffalo Bills Stadium at the last minute, and that's not an exception to the rule.
To be continued.
Thank you.
Lisa O'Keefe, thank you for being with us as you challenge the Democratic incumbent Donald Lapardo in the 123rd Assembly District. Good to see you again.
It was great seeing you as well.
It's been decades.